Good. Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Glad that y'all are here. We're going to call the Small Business Development Committee to order, and it appears that we have a quorum, so we can begin. First order of business is we'd like to get Dwayne Hill to lead us in a devotional, if he'd be kind enough to do that. What microphone? 13.
Let us pray. Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we seek your wisdom, your knowledge, and your guidance. Father, watch over everything that we do, and may we please you, Father, and that we do the job we need to be doing for our constituents. God, we ask again for your guidance. And Lord, we thank you for everything you do for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate you doing that. Well, we're getting close to Sunny Da, and so and we have a big agenda, and I just want to let everybody know how much I appreciate the participation, not only from the committee members, but from the people coming and making presentations. And today's presentation are going to be angel investors and apartments and apartments. So we're going to begin with Stephen Davis. If you would start us out, I'd appreciate it. Step up to the podium.
Good morning. Thank you all for having us today. I'm Stephen Davis, Government Affairs Director for the Georgia Apartment Association. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of the association and let the real experts have their time. So our association represents nearly 600 owners and managers and over 1,500 associate members across the state of Georgia. And GAA provides over 1 million Georgians homes in over 550,000 apartment homes. And GAA members, something I think all of you will be appreciative of, GAA members contribute $1.45 billion in taxes and other revenues to local governments. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom Adderhold and Jay McKennedy. Thank y'all.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you? And ladies, nice to see you this morning. I'm Tom Adderhold. I'm with Adderhold Properties here in Atlanta, Macon, and surrounding areas. And just to give you a little idea of what's been going on in the apartment industry in the last year, let's start off by saying it's been an interesting year. We've all had that interesting year. We've had issues with non-payment of rent, issues with the moratorium, and crime, other issues. But the key really is we like to take care of our residents. We don't want them going anywhere. We want them to be able to pay their rent. And eviction is the last resort. We don't want any part of that. As a matter of fact, it not only hurts the residents, it hurts us too, because we have to go back and redo everything. Right now, because of the moratorium, we're unable to evict. Courtrooms are closed. There's just nothing we can do, really. And some people are just, kind of thumbing their nose at us. We can stay here all we want. Can't do anything about it. Those that do want to pay their rent that are unable, they come and visit with us. And we'll find a way to help them with their rent. We don't do late fees. We don't charge them extra in any way. We'll allow them to pay weekly installments instead of monthly. We just throw the book out the window and try to assist and keep people in their homes. Regarding the crime issue, that's just nationwide. We've seen it everywhere. Major cities primarily, and also you have people leaving downtowns and getting out into suburbs. That's been written about recently. So from our standpoint, here's what's happened to us. Insurance coverage. Our insurance coverage on our properties has gone up 200% in the last year. That's our cost. That's because of crime. That's because of everything that's going on around us, just the cost of doing business. Property taxes, what have they gone up?
At least 200% over the last 3 years.
Our property taxes went up 40% last year. That was after we got it down from 150% suggested retail price that the city and the counties wanted to charge us. You want to get into any of these?
Yeah, no, and I think Tom has done a great job of kind of explaining some of the issues that we're facing during COVID. And thank you again for taking the time to meet with us. I think even before COVID and the pandemic, our industry was getting some headlines as it related to affordability and availability. And the state, you guys have done a phenomenal job as it relates to attracting new business. I mean, Atlanta feels like every week we have an unbelievable announcement with a major corporation coming, and they've done that for all the phenomenal reasons we all love Georgia: the great infrastructure, the proximity, the workforce, the quality of life. And part of that is affordable housing and the abundance of the housing stock. But as Tom is alluding to, not obviously the pandemic has exacerbated it, but even prior to that, we were feeling the pinch on a lot of different fronts. We have municipalities that are obviously trying to raise their tax base and tax code, and doing so fairly aggressively as new sales occur and set records. And while that's on one hand understandable, on the other, it's very hard to balance that with being able to provide affordable housing. We're in the end just a provider. We collect $1 and pass out 98 cents of it. So when we get a tax increase or when we get an insurance increase, like Tom mentioned, that goes right onto our renter, and again exacerbates the problem. Further exacerbated is the idea of inclusionary zoning and some of these other zoning ordinances that local municipalities have used as a response in order to deal with affordability or concerns from within their citizens. However, while that certainly has a place and can help in the spectrum, it can't provide nearly, well, it can't be the only solution, because it certainly can't work quick enough and at great enough volume. What we really need is supply. We need the availability to be able to put in new units to help alleviate some of the demand concern because of all the great jobs that we're creating. And again, it feels like on every turn, as we've heated up in this market, and it can be understood, but we've faced headwinds. And I think in order for us to be able to meet the demand that's coming because of all these phenomenal jobs that we're adding, we really need to figure out ways to pull out some legislation and red tape that surrounds development, because without that and absent that, we're going to continue to have an artificially high supply, or rather demand constrained by a supply. So I went on a little bit of a tangent, Tom, but wanted to make sure we got that in.
Well, you made your point.
Yeah,
Which is
thank
good.
you.
I really guess other than that, the differences between this last year and previous years, I'll give you a couple of ideas here. The non-payment of rent usually occurs between 1 and 2% of our renters. Right now, it's between 5 and 7, and that's after we've taken care and helped those who are want to be helped. For instance, we've had some people, when they get their stimulus checks, walk in and say, here's my rent for month before last, which is great to see. Of course, then you have the others who get their stimulus checks and buy a new Corvette or something. I mean, that obviously is just human nature. That's what happens. So if you have any questions of us, we'd be glad to answer them as best we can.
Well, thank you. What we're going to do is, as far as the questions, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Because we've got an extensive program and a lot of speakers, we're going to send the questions to your advocate with the Apartment Association and let them answer it. But I appreciate you sharing that the non-payments have moved from the 1 to 2% to the 5 to 7% because of the moratorium on. One question that just has to be asked is, What do you see in the future? Has that, the courts and everything, has that been addressed or is that still ongoing?
Now, we still are unable to evict for cause or for anything else. I mean, it's impossible purely because you can't access them.
Yeah.
So
No, I would agree.
we have heard about the potential of a tsunami whenever this opens up. It may happen that way. I don't think so. The flow through the judicial system has got to be fairly organized, and it's going to take some time for a backlog, as in anything, like a big car crash. After a while, it takes a while to clear the docket. So that's where we see it coming.
And one last thing is, do you see any relief either from the federal government or the state government ourselves? You know, because of the inability to collect rent, your expenses still continue, your payroll, your electricity, your insurance, property taxes. Has there been any relief in sight for that?
I haven't seen any. Have you?
No, I haven't. However, I do believe the new bill that passed with the rental assistance, and I believe Georgia's been allocated 552 million. And I also believe that the landlords have the ability to apply on behalf of the tenants. I think that will help alleviate certainly some of our smaller members who really can't afford to carry, you know, a number of units.
So there's some coming. It's slow, but so is the rest of life sometimes.
Well, actually, I apologize, but I would like to add one other thing. Just that in addition to the evictions, for whatever reason, kind of unbeknown to us, but Georgia has become a hotbed for fraud, for identity theft fraud. For every 10 leases we sign at our property, only 2 finally get approved. And that's after using a fairly rigorous and expensive screening process, because apparently it's very prevalent. In fact, if you go through some of the drive-throughs here in Atlanta, there are bandit bumper stickers with phone numbers on how to get fake social security numbers and credentialed ID. So that's something that the entirety of our membership here in Georgia is dealing with. And it's having, you know, an oversized cost on the staff as well as our legal bills.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing the news of your industry, and thank you for what you do to the state.
Thank you.
We're going to have to move along now. And Tony, I think you were going to do an introduction.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tony Toops with Advantage Capital, and we're one of the participants in the Georgia Agribusiness and Rural Jobs Program, also known as GARJA, which you passed in 2017. It was spearheaded and sponsored by then Representative Jason Shaw, and we're now working on a renewal. And I'm happy to report that everything that was discussed 4 years ago has happened. So over 30 small businesses dispersed throughout rural Georgia, which is defined as in this bill as a county with 50,000 or fewer people, have received access to capital they couldn't otherwise get. So we have today a couple of the companies that have participated in the program with us that are going to talk about their particular stories. But I think this is an incredible example of what can be done with a good partnership between government and private sector. So upfront, it's all private cash goes into these funds. The funds then turn around and make loans into these small businesses. You have DCA did a report last week, about 50% of the businesses are manufacturing. And then there's this healthcare, technology, true agribusiness. There's even, I think, a couple of row crop investments. So it spans the spectrum. My company was very fortunate. We've invested in everything from Katy Bag down in Pearson, Georgia. They make the bags that apples and, citrus fruit comes in. Danimer over in Bainbridge, they make the feedstock for biodegradable plastic straws, which is really going to be a big and growing business. Melt-blown technologies, they make the mats that shops can use to absorb oil and lubricants on the floor, things of that safety. We did a nursing home in Thomasville, so it's very broad. It's very flexible. And I'm going to introduce next a couple of other gentlemen who have come to help here today. One is Carlene Dinkler. He is with a competitor of ours, Enhanced Capital Partners, and then Mr. John Danger, who is with another competitor, Stonehenge, who has also made investments. And they can talk about the specifics of their companies and their involvement. So that's a very broad overview. I know it's early. Happy that we can get into a lot of details if you like, answer questions. So Carlene, why don't
Thank you, Tony. Great introduction. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. Committee members, good to see you this morning. My name is Carlene Dinkler. I work as the head of public affairs for Enhanced Capital. And I want to say thank you for the work that you do. I'm the son of two small business owners and know how important it is for small businesses, the important role that they play in supporting our communities, because they're not only economically important, they're the ones who sponsor the Little League teams, underwrite the community events, and really help a community find its identity. So yeah, I'm happy to report that we have participated in the Georgia Agribusiness Rural Jobs program. We managed $20 million worth of capital that has all been deployed to small businesses in rural parts of Georgia. And this is really an extension of what we have done at Enhanced Capital for the last 20 years. We are experiencing working with policymakers like y'all to make sure that private capital flows to the places that it doesn't through traditional means. Because again, we know how important it is for those small businesses to help communities find their identity. And so today, I'm pleased to introduce Will Wingate and Thomas Farmer, who are with one of our portfolio companies, Second Century Ag out of Osceola. I'll let them come up and talk a little bit about what they're doing. Or John, I guess maybe are you coming up first?
Excuse me, I just got a text. One of the businesses has a hard stop at 8:30, so let Mr. Danger come up and introduce his people who will be on.
Okay, great. And then Thomas.
Good morning. My name is John Danger, and I'm with Stonehenge Capital. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about us because I really want you to hear from one of our business owners that we put capital into and see what they've been able to do with it and what they couldn't have done with it beforehand. So I'm not sure how to introduce Umesh Kaitan on Zoom. He's the CEO of Doorcraft Products, Cosmo Cabinets. So Umesh, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. So I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you, gentlemen, for allowing me to just come in and talk about how Garja and Stonehenge has helped us. So a company is called Cosmo Cabinets. We are based in Eatonton, Georgia, in Putnam County. And we had taken a space of about 350,000 square feet. Can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
we can.
sorry. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we have about 350. Yeah. So we have about 350,000 square feet. This was used to be the old Horton Home building, which employed about 2,500 people in this area, and it went basically to zero. So we've come in and we've taken the space. We've started with 100,000 square feet, and we make cabinets, kitchen cabinets for apartment buildings and for senior living. And how Stonehenge has helped us, how Garja has helped us is very simple, that we wouldn't be in business today if it wasn't for Stonehenge's help at the right time when we needed the capital. And we were about 30 employees at that time, and we would have run out of capital, we would have shut down. Today, we've been able to grow that to 60 employees, and we have the space now, and we have the base. Where now, we'd probably, hopefully, in the next 4 years, be able to grow this to about 300 employees in this space. So given where we were as a company back then, I don't think we would have had access to any capital if it wasn't for the Garja Fund for us. And Stonehenge has been a great partner for us as well, because they've sort of helped us through thinking through our ideas. They are always available to us in participating in giving their inputs, and they also participate with us on our board meetings. So it's been truly a blessing having this program for ourselves and helped our community here in creating the jobs, which has allowed us to really grow the market. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
No, thank you very much. at this time, what we're planning on doing is, because we do have an extensive list of folks to speak, we will address the questions to the advocates. I guess, is Will next?
Yes.
Will, come on up.
That is based in Ocilla, Georgia. And a little quick background, we are industrial hemp processors. And it was not just a couple of years ago when you could not process hemp in Georgia. But Will and I and our other business partner decided that we were going to learn about the business, and grew 150 acres in Tennessee, where it was allowed at that point, knowing full well that we were going to take everything we learned back to our home state of Georgia. Once your fellow colleagues at the House Ag and Senate Ag committees structured the program here in Georgia, we were off and running, and we opened our doors at a facility down in Ocilla, Irwin County, for those that don't know. And it's been a rocket ride ever since. But I think most importantly, the reason we're standing before you today is because of our work with Enhanced Capital and Garja program. We would not be able to have gotten where we are without a $3 million loan from that program through Enhanced Capital. And then again, one of the things that Enhanced has always done is been there for us to help guide us, offer advice. They've got a full catalog of companies they've worked with in rural areas across the country, and they've brought that experience to us. So it's been very helpful. I'll let Will talk a little bit more about our jobs and where we are today.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having us here. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces. Our exterminator down the road from Coffee County, it's good to see you here, Representative Lurica. I'm a native of Irwin County. My great-grandfather bought our farm in 1919. So grew up being a graduate from Irwin County High School, going to college, moving to Atlanta. It's been really just satisfying to create jobs back in my hometown and in a rural community that so desperately needs anything. We're just one small story. You come to our plant, we've recruited people from New York, recruited people back from Florida. We're recruiting local people who want just a better opportunity. Last year during our growing season, we had 22 employees at our facility in Ocilla, and we're going to ramp up as the growing season and the processing season kicks back, and we'll expand more. But as Thomas alluded to, we could not be in business without Enhanced and without the Garja Act. So you guys, Representative Shaw, when he came up with this idea, it was theoretical. You can come down here and tour our plant, see our employees. You can see how it's working. You can see our name on the Irwin County Little League baseball team. So again, we encourage everyone to re-up this. It's a budget priority, particularly those of us who work in the rural communities, and it just makes such a huge, and it's made a really important change in everybody's lives down there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Will, would you share what y'all do at the plant?
Absolutely.
And what the raw material is, and what the finished product is, and who your customers are? Would you share a little detail like?
So last year was the first year we could grow hemp in Georgia, and we could go into this. We didn't really know if it would even grow, but it grew and it did very well. We went the route of finding old tobacco farmers who had the infrastructure in place, who had the ability to know and work a crop that's labor intensive. And we grew 120 acres in Georgia. We take that biomass, that material, goes to our plant. We run it through a machine that converts it into a crude oil. Then we run it through another set of machinery that takes that crude oil into what's called a distillate. And that distillate can then be blended for CBD oil, which you guys have seen all over the place. We've got the first Georgia grown, second century ag premium CBD oil that's got the Georgia grown sticker on it. So we do that. We sell it retail wise. We create distillate for other suppliers. We white label products. We've got products on the shelves in Brazil. We've got them in Nigeria. We've got customers all over the US. So this little product that we send out was grown in Irwin and Coffee County, Thomas County in rural Georgia. So yes, it's a new business. We're learning it. It's changing daily, but it's here to stay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may too, one of the unique things about our business too is it's not just impacting Irwin County, as Will just alluded to. We have 12 farmers, I believe, across South Georgia that grew with us, for us, and it's not very often that a new crop comes online, right? So it's an experience too for different counties where they've been growing as well. So has that trickle down effect, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all being here. All right, who's next? Okay. Representative Goldberg. What number?
Got it? I'm just going to stay up here and introduce our next two speakers. Dr. Paul Lopez is actually the co-founder and partner in 1111 Ventures. It's one of the most active venture capitalist firms in the Southeast, investing in and growing mainly early stage technology companies. He also serves on the board of TIE Atlanta, and it is one of the largest nonprofit global organizations focused on entrepreneurs with approximately 15,000 members at every stage of businesses in about approximately 60 chapters across 4 countries. And he's an entrepreneur. The other person who'll speak for just a second, yes, the name is Rory Robichaux, and yes, it's my husband, who also is more along the lines of angel investment in technology and some of the programs that they've started. They're working together for minority and women-owned businesses and others as they do angel investment.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to the committee. How much time do we have? I was told 4 hours, but no. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, whether you're coming on via Zoom or here in the room with us. I'm a professor by trade, having taught for a long time at Kennesaw State in the MBA program. So you're going to forgive me if I ask you some questions. Okay, that's part of being involved as good students, and we won't send you a tuition bill. So I was asked to come and just shed a little bit of light on angel investing. I think it's a term you hear, and people typically think that that's stuff they do in California. They think they do it in New York. But if you think about it, what is angel investing? So first question, by a show of hands, and I'll try and watch the Zoom squares as well. How many here think you're an angel investor? Show of hands. I know Rory is, and Mary. Okay, 1. Okay. More importantly, how many of you think you're an entrepreneur that at some time had to raise money or likely to have to raise money? A lot more hands, right? Well, angel investing is that combination of people who have money. They've already, by the way, 55% of angels have been entrepreneurs before. The rest of them are either senior managers, middle managers, people who've exited their businesses. And so angel investing is that culmination of where somebody who needs money, but probably has already gone the route of 65% of them go to friends and family. Believe it or not, that's the #1 place you can raise money from, right? It is not so common that you think you can go to a bank, even though we think, because when you're an entrepreneur with an idea and a passion, you're not out there going, look, I have this great business plan, give me $300,000. That's not as easy, right? So angel investing is about 30 to 35% of all monies that go into new businesses. And so it's a very big piece, right? I say, actually, it's 30 to 32%, add to the 65, and only 3 to 5% comes from the institutionals. I represent both of those last 2 portions, right? Institutionals called VCs, private equity companies. So that's sort of just to give you a little bit of the landscape. How do people get into, by the way, on the entrepreneurship side, I will tell you, Georgia is doing a fantastic job of teaching entrepreneurship at the university level. How do I know? For the last 8 years, I've worked across Georgia universities as a volunteer to help students see that there is a career path of either going to work for IBM like I did, because my parents were not entrepreneurs, so I thought it was the path to go. My mother was an educator. But today, the students are now really passionate about, I can work for myself. And isn't that fantastic if we can enable that, right? We have to enable it because those people have an idea. In most cases, they're going to bootstrap or ask friends and family, and occasionally they look to people like I think the lady there said, angel investing. So the question is, how does angel investing even connect? You have to sort of know somebody. And one of the things I'm going to ask at the end is, I think the state of Georgia is at that inflection point where angel investors and entrepreneurs are getting to know each other, and we have a better process that's starting to form. Believe it or not, last year was, they say angel groups typically put in, $100,000 when they pool their money into a deal. Last year, our angel group put $2.3 million despite COVID. In the last 3.5 years, we put $7.3 million into 22 businesses. I'm sorry to say only 9 of them were from Georgia. I wish 19 of them were from Georgia. But what we've now started to do is intentionally try to connect the right angel investors who care about making money back, right? And the way they make money back is they look at financials, they bet on the space. Either they know it, or if they don't know it, they join together as a team of angels. And then they basically say, I'm going to give you the money and I'm going to either be a strategic investor and help you with connections. But at some point, 5 to 8 years from now, I'm expecting my money back. The typical number we tend to tell people is, if you get about 3x your money back, that's what we call a 22%, 26% internal rate of return, by the way. Right? So I'm just giving you a little bit of landscape so we're all on the same page in that regard. The one program I think we've chosen to be intentional about this year, because we did last year, I'm going to ask Rory to sort of, just as an example of one of our investors, is the one area where Georgia can do better is provide a better marketplace, provide an information database, because it's as easy for me to find companies today. Why did the other that are not part of the 9 or the 22 go to monies I invested in California, in Boston, in Texas? Is because we don't have a good flow of information, right? The good news is we're known because when you write checks, people know you're writing checks and they come to us, right? They know that if you did one and you're likely to do it again. So the area we chose last year to have an intentional focus on is a program called the TIE Access Program. If you think of an entrepreneur who's truly underserved, whether you're in the rural area, in the urban areas, is an underrepresented group where the women and minority founders are not being invested in enough. Would you agree? Ma'am, I don't know if you ran a business, but I would tell you, I think it's an area we can do better at. And angel investors also want to have social impact. And if they can make money, even better. So we've started this program where we invest in minority founders and in women founders. And last year, we picked 3 of them last year. We invested $295,000. 2 were in Georgia, 1 was out of Raleigh. This year, we're planning to put $500,000. We'd love that kind of $500,000 into 5 such companies run by Blacks, Hispanics, women, et cetera. Our geography for that is the Southeast. We'd love for them all to be in Georgia, but I've got partner chapters in Florida and the Carolinas. So I just wanted to have Rory tell you why he chose. And not only did he come in as an investor, by the way, let me ask you, take a guess at what do you think angel investors write checks for? It used to be traditionally $25,000. So it wasn't easy. Today, you can write checks if you're part of a group. If you write $25,000, you can play an individual sport. You can say, here's $25,000, I'm going to give it to my brother-in-law, I'm going to give it to my friend, et cetera. But today, angel groups are writing checks in the $10,000 per person, aggregating them, into roughly right 100,000 kind of deal, that makes a difference. I think we could see an explosion of job growth if we did that more and more. So one of the things I'm going to suggest at the very end is let's figure out how we can share that information, make it a true marketplace of companies that are entrepreneurial in Georgia, of angel investors who are in Georgia, and then figure out how do we make that marriage happen. But I'm going to ask Rory to come tell you why he chose not only to join as an investor in our Access program, the one for minorities and women businesses, but he got his co-founder of the company that he works in also to come do that at 5,000 and at 10,000. So of that 295, they were 15,000, one of 50 people that we had. Rory, tell us why you did that.
Chairman, representatives, thank you for the time. Yes, as you heard earlier, I'm a serial entrepreneur. These days, I spend most of my time as chief marketing officer for a global marketing intelligence and digital advertising company. But I want to talk to you about angel investing. And for years, as a serial entrepreneur, I had to pound the pavement and look for that money and was successful at that. But after a while, recently, I decided I wanted to see what I could do to help, to give back, to help companies start that. It amazed me when I realized how naive I was thinking I could get into this easily. To me, the entire industry and concept of angel investing was a strange animal. And I found it a difficult time to match myself up with the appropriate organizations. And it was only through my working with Paul and Ty Atlanta and other organizations that I felt comfortable and did write, as he said, a modest investment of $5,000. And now I'm part owner in a number of companies, a number of them actually here in Georgia, and one of them actually going and winning international competitions, or at least doing quite well in them so far. They're still competing. But again, the thing is, over the last few years, and for the past 15 years, I've been looking at investing, but I've seen the maturity in the angel investing community come very far in the last few years. And so we're getting there, but we need help. And we need help from the state of Georgia, as Paul said, in a way that we can actually create this marketplace and make it and help it to be the behemoth that it really can be. We know that Georgia is the #1 state for business, but let's turn our focus also not only to the Fortune 500 companies, but where the angel investment community can make a great difference in the state of Georgia. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah. So let me put a little bit of color behind the who we invested with our 295. The #1 investment went to a lady who had just graduated here from Emory with an MD MBA. She had a partner in Texas, and guess what business they started pre-COVID? And I'll actually tell you, guess what? During COVID, they doubled in size. So it was a business that actually sells kits through the mom and pop pharmacies. So think about it. Everybody thinks, we go buy our stuff at CVS or Walgreens. Believe it or not, there are 20,000 mom and pop pharmacies. So they white label products for earaches, strep throat, now COVID-19 testing, et cetera. But through the power of technology, when they know you're looking for that and you're sick at home or your kid is sick at home, they're able to know that they can inform that small pharmacy. It's called Physician 360, by the way, the name of the company. And they tell the pharmacy to ensure that if they can home deliver that strep test kind of deal, they can do that. And immediately on your screen or at the pharmacy, they'll tell you, would you like a telehealth visit with a doctor in one of our chains? Suddenly they've married a whole lot of stuff together. They grew double last year. They're expecting to double this year. Okay, it's called Physician 360. That's the kind of company we would love to see more of. We put 165,000 of our 395, and then we additionally put another 5-figure check from my VC side as well. Wouldn't it be great if we found another 100 such companies? By the way, they happen to be here in Georgia. Their distribution is in the South, but there's so many other companies. Like I said, there were a whole lot more hands that said, I'm an entrepreneur looking for that last piece of cash. They'll put cash in. By the way, angel investing and so on, we tell everybody we shouldn't get more than 30% of that company. Why? Because we want those founders who own the 70 to really feel passionate that they can grow the company, grow jobs, grow our economy, et cetera. So in that regard, it's different than a PE firm that tries to buy at least 51% of the company, right? So this year, we're hoping at least to find companies like that. By the way, we'll likely, through our angel group, do maybe 12 investments beyond just this access intentional program, et cetera. And so I'd like to, before I ask if there are any questions, because I'm here to do a few tutorial for you. You can tell we're passionate about what we do as a volunteer with Thai Atlanta, which is the largest, which is an entrepreneurship group, been around 29 years. I'm going to ask you to just think about, you can do what I choose to tell my MBA students that typically happens in corporate America. Do you know what the number one action that most companies take? And that we could choose to take, but I'm hoping not with this committee. And that number one action, now that I've made you think about it, it's not redraw the org chart, go start a new business, add a division. The number one thing that most companies do is to do nothing. And we can choose to do nothing, but I think that I'm going to give us more credit than that. I believe that as a volunteer, I'm going to offer that we can help if you folks would sponsor some kind of study group, a task force that gets us readier for where 2022 becomes our real inflection point. And the part that we could study in the beginning is, who are these entrepreneurs? Who are the angel investors who want to put in? By the way, we tell people, try to do about one a quarter. So if you put 5,000 or 10,000 once a quarter, over 3 to 5 years, you'll build a portfolio of 15 to 20 companies, because diversity is important. You can go find agribusiness, you can find media tech, you can find, I happen to be focused on technology, but there's a lot of non-technology, retail businesses, et cetera, apps, all these things that are looking for money to multiply their growth. I would love to see you folks sponsor. We're available for after today to help you with just information. I think if we can collect enough of us, and there's enough growing here in the state of Georgia that is interested in finding good deals, we could marry up the group of entrepreneurs looking for money and the angel investors. So that would be my sort of ask for to please not do nothing in that regard, but maybe we'll leave some time so that you've got any questions or ideas of how we can together make Georgia even better?
What we would like to also hear from you is about, more specifically about some of the companies, if you could see, like you just did with the Physicians 360, talk about some of the companies you've invested in, talk about, and obviously those will be the successes, but maybe talk about the failures.
Okay. I'll start with a failure first.
Okay, and then what about the tax implications of the angel investor?
Great. So I'll start with a failure, then I'll start with one we're actually investing in even as we speak. I'll probably sign the check this week. So a failure was a company. Sometimes you have an idea that it's before its time, right? And failure doesn't mean that you don't get any money back. It maybe you get cents on the dollar back. So it was a company, you know what, I'd rather not name them, a logistics software company. They were a marketplace that if you were a truck, believe it or not, 90% of trucking occurs not with the big companies that have 1,000 trucks. They actually have 5, 6, 8 trucks. And those trucks, on many cases, believe it or not, do their return trip empty. Isn't that a waste? So they came up with a marketplace idea that would go fill those trucks up on the way back, as it were. And they put that together, but it was basically a logistics supply chain kind of company. They never could get enough traction, and they couldn't figure out the margin aspect. So it was a lack of economics, not a lack of great idea technology. And so in that particular one, they were housed here in Midtown at the Atlanta ATDC. Advanced Technology Development Center. And there we may get back a few cents on the dollars because they can still sell their intellectual property. So there's an idea started by a Black gentleman from Georgia Tech. One we're looking at, another example that we're doing right now here, they're raising about $1 million. They've got most of it already raised, will likely be the last 100,000 into them. It's a company called Ripple, WRIPPLE. And basically, think about great ideas. So we've had gig economies. We all hear about how people want to work. Well, the creative folks who work for themselves are also a gig economy. How do they, not through big design firms, how do they go do your website? How do they go do some kind of drawings for you, et cetera? They've become a creative marketplace. Think of it as an Uber for connecting these folks who are creative design people with the enterprises, so they can then create an ongoing subscription platform. So that would be another kind of company. Now, it turns out I gave you examples that are Georgia-based. Remember, I can give you a lot more examples that are not Georgia-based. Another one that we did was a fintech company that's out of Buckhead. Believe it or not, the financial industry, let me ask you, what percent of people do not have savings of $1,000 or therefore don't even have savings of $1,000? Any guesses? Unfortunately, the majority of Americans. Isn't that sad? So if they've got to go to work, now that we're starting to see post-COVID or co-COVID kind of situation, and the car breaks down and the mechanic says it's a $740 bill, that person may or may not have the ability to get to work anymore. So there's an industry called the installment pay industry. And that's what they do. They marry up. This is a person who doesn't have $1,000, probably has $200, right? Ready for the next trip to the grocery store. They marry up people to do non-collateralized loans. They've taken off with a lot of growth, et cetera. A business here, because I'm in technology that's here in Georgia, is in the IoT space. So what's IoT? Internet of Things. It's little computer chips inside everything. So it's not just in your phone, but it's in your refrigerator, it's in your car, it's in all those trucks going by, it's in the e-scooters. That whole industry is taking off. And last year they grew by this company we're investing in, it's called Emrit, E-M-R-I-T. And they basically are building the cell towers for this kind of connection of information. Cell towers. What's a cell tower? Cell tower is a little box. Literally, I stick it in my window and it enables us to connect all these devices that are roaming around, called IoT. These IoT devices, last year they grew by 4x. This year they'll grow by 5x. That's the kind of company we're raising money for or we're investing in. That wouldn't it be great? Now, it turns out from that particular one, we incorporated that portion in a Delaware corporation for a lot of reasons, I think, Mr. Chairman, you're trying to allude to. Turned out we actually are, one of our best investments that went so fast was called Cellfire, C-E-L-L-P-H-I-R-E, biotech company out of Maryland. You know why they got oversubscribed faster? We couldn't put money fast enough. They could take, because Maryland offered them a 50% tax credit. So in other words, if I put $10,000 on my next bill, I'd get a $5,000 credit. It was oversubscribed. I know we had that here till about 2018. I'll tell you what, we'd love to see that perhaps reinvigorated and here, but there were a couple of things that caused it not to work as well. And you know, if you can learn, we call it failing forward. If we can learn what we did and why it didn't work, my suggestion was it was complicated. Why is it complicated? Because A, we had to educate the whole CPA set of folks, and we had to educate all the investors. When you have to educate two sets of people, that's a long cycle. It's hard enough B to C, that's B to B to C kind of deal. Number two is you had to remember what you did 2 years ago. So if you invested in 2017, you had to remember in 2020 when you're doing your taxes 2 years. I mean, it's a long cycle. I think that kind of stuff, and it had a 35% tax credit, if I recall, here in the state of Georgia, had some other requirements. So that's all possible, and we can help work with you to maybe fashion it to where the education becomes better. That's why I said one of the actions that I'd love to offer ourselves as free labor, free volunteer for is how can we help this information flow for businesses that may be in Bainbridge or in Savannah or wherever that today don't know of the opportunities. There's money all over the state. How do we connect ourselves through technology? Does that help answer? It was a
We're almost out of time, but I really would like for you to tell me some more about the different companies.
Okay.
And then if you've got any examples of maybe some in the rural part of the state.
I think today, I don't know that I've got one, but I can come back or post if I offer that we could look at some that might be in rural part of the state, because right now we're working with students at Valdosta State in the chemistry area as an example, and very likely they're kids that come around from the neighboring area. So I can look at that as an example. Today, the information flows easier in the urban area. So I will tell, that's why I keep saying, can we create a marketplace that's technology enabled? Because then if you're in wherever, our very first company we ever looked at, by the way, was from the Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, right? 8 years ago kind of deal. At that time, we weren't doing angel investing, but wouldn't it be great? They had a deal where you had an item. Think about it. When you go on a road trip, and we will all go on road trips again, et cetera, how do you, where do you keep the garbage in the car? So they came up with a plastic container that was easy to hook onto the headrest and went onto the back seat. Wouldn't that be a great one to find and reinvest in kind of deal that would be sold at convenience stores? I'm looking here. Let me get back to you about the ones. I would tell you we're not doing enough in the urban areas, and I'm offering that perhaps with a marketplace of information, we ought to, because there are great ideas coming from these small towns and clearly from the urban areas. I think, by the way, we can connect also the angels that may be in the Augustas of the world. Even that's a big city, but in the small rural areas, right by the borders in Georgia, et cetera. So at this point, as I look, here's another one. Came out of a Georgia Tech student in the Buckhead area. They created some capabilities where in the sports area, they were able to create some intellectual property with physical therapy kind of products they could sell through Amazon and through other e-commerce kind of ways. And they got some sports figures to actually become their spokesperson. So they've taken off. It's a company called BW Health. As an example. Here's one in Alpharetta, but again, I'm sorry that I'm only giving you urban kind of examples. By the way, I can give you many. Remember, I told you only 9 of 22 that were in Georgia. There's one here, which is an app in Florida out of Tampa called Pick My Kid. Think about it. We actually manage carpool lanes in schools terribly, don't we? If you've ever had to drop your kid off, that's got to be the worst kind of, much like, right, the whole idea of getting a COVID vaccine. Pick My Kid had an app whereby they connected the schools, the PTAs, the moms, et cetera, dropping off their kids and made it an enjoyable experience. And who paid for it? All the advertisers who wanted to get to these moms, et cetera. So there's one we invested into a young man who's in the Tampa area. We did invest in one called SimTrain. They're out of Alpharetta. They're basically an education tech company, an ed tech company. Basically, they, through the power of software, allow you to have simulation exercises to make education more enjoyable. If you don't know, the word gamification is alive and well. People today, whether they're 20, 30, 40, 50, want to have ways that interact and learn without necessarily going and taking a week off to go to classes. So we've invested in SimTrain, SYM, like simulation training kind of deal. So that might give you a few examples. I'm trying to think of others. There's one in Washington, DC called Empower Financing. There's a whole industry that, you know what entrepreneurs do? They get this idea about something that's not being solved, and they figure out for themselves what they could do. It got started by a young man who had come to college here from outside the country and discovered that, you know, while we say that people have a lot of student debt, if you're a student from another country, how do you get a loan? Well, this company called Empower Financing is giving out loans. They're growing at massive amounts to students who come from foreign countries, and they work it through the universities, so their default rate is less than 2%, which I wish we could say about our students, couldn't we? All the people who say, we just want the president to write our loans off. I'll tell you, as a citizen, I want to pay all my taxes. Never a penny more, never a penny less kind of deal. So maybe that gives you a little bit of color, Mr. Chair.
No, that was great. We greatly appreciate both y'all coming and sharing your knowledge. Angel investing is an area that I know the state is focused on, because we want to develop we want to be not only the #1 state to do business, but we also want to be the #1 state for small business.
Great.
And at times I feel like I'm hanging on to a tiger by the tail, because we are moving kind of rapidly. But with that being said, thank you very much for being here. Committee members, thank you online and here in the room. Thank you for being here, and we're adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.